awesome.
Awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No,
You're awesome.
no,
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev, and this is a show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. First of all, we're finally in September. I got burned out in August doing 2 shows a week, starting a second podcast about Game of Thrones, and also guesting on a bunch of different podcasts. I think I averaged about 4 shows a week that I was a part of in some manner, and that was all for the Philadelphia Podcast Fest. It's over and done with. It was a great time. Thank you for everyone that came out, supported that, whether you did it from Tattooed Mom, whether you did it from Amalgam Comics, whether you did it from listening to anyone that's provided their show for download, or streamed. It was streamed on Wildfire Radio. Anyway, this week's guest that we got is someone who I met from the Philadelphia Podcast Festival. Me and one of the people that put together the festival were chatting, evidently over his show, and he volunteered me to be a guest on his show. And if you've seen me tweet about it lately, it was oh god, I'm gonna butcher the name of your podcast. I'm sorry, dude. This Makes Me Happy, I believe, is the proper name of the show. We'll find out in just a moment. But I was a guest on that show. And you're probably not going to be surprised to know that I probably talked all over the host, because that's what I do, is I talk. Please welcome to the show the host of This Makes Me Happy, Bernado. I don't know your last name.
Margulis, but Bernardo's fine because no one can pronounce my last name.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for being on the show, dude.
Thank you for inviting me, and I spoke over your intro. I don't know if I was supposed to do that or not. Maybe.
No, it's fine. You know what? There's no written rule to my intro. I like to do a long-winded intro. A, I'm long-winded. B, this show came from Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman, and his original concept for that, which was he talked to people involved with Batman, whether it was the movies, the comics, whatever. And when he interviews someone, he usually gives like a 5-minute intro. He gives like a really long-winded intro. I'm not that articulate, so I can't do that. But I try to give a good intro to, just kind of pimp you out,
But I gotta give you credit. You say you're not that articulate, but when I started my podcast, my original goal was to have there's a scripted intro, and then on the outro have this conclusion on the whole episode. And I was like, I'm not good at it. I'll just let the guy talk or the lady talk, and you did an awesome job at it. So don't say you're not articulate.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I had something stuck in my mouth. I don't know. I got food that I just found.
So I will take that your interruption while you take whatever's out of your mouth. Yeah. I didn't know how Zencaster works, and I didn't know if you were going to be able to see me or not. So I prepared myself to hijack your episode, because I heard the last one that you were talking about hijacking someone else's episode, and I came up with a little drinking game.
Okay.
I don't drink a lot, but my goal was for you to see me take sips every time something happened, and then see if you could discover my key, and then I was going to show it to you. But because this is only audio, let's see if you can hear me drinking and then figure out my rules. So it's not gonna be as fun hijacking your show because you can't see me.
I like that. See, I really like that concept of hijacking. I have yet to do it. I mean, I guess I hijacked your show a bit by just talking a lot, but I didn't ask questions. I think it's a funny bit, but like I said, I think it was with when I was on the show when I had the boys from Dissecting the 80s on. I feel like I wouldn't be invited back to a lot of shows or to any shows.
No, it was awesome. And then, speaking about you being on my podcast, I asked you to join my podcast because you were being chatty as I was recording, and I was like, dude, all right, if you're gonna be chatty, you're gonna be chatting on my podcast.
100%. Oh god, damn it, dude. So okay, and the reason I'm getting angry oh, what's that?
Why damn it?
I just said 100%,
and I just took a swig.
That's what it is.
That's one of my keys to when I take a drink.
That's funny.
You discovered it.
And you know what? I swear I never, unless, I mean, you can tell me because you recently listened to one of my other episodes.
I listened to a couple of them.
I don't think I say that often at all. I noticed it when I was listening to the playback of This Makes Me Happy. I say 100% a lot.
I don't think you said on your previous episodes that I heard from you. You definitely said a lot of my episodes, enough that I put it on my key of my drinking game.
And I gotta say, I did curse once during the show.
Oh, did you?
I did. I said bullshit at some point.
Oh, all right. I'm gonna have to tag it as explicit because iTunes is gonna kick me out.
Yeah. I wonder how much they actually pay attention to that because I've always just put explicit on my shows because I don't censor myself, and the fact that I only said bullshit on your show amazes me. Like I typically, I mean, you've listened to the shows now. I curse not as much as Kevin Smith, let's say, but fairly often.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, let's so as we discovered on when I was a guest on your show, you're fairly new to podcasting. You're 26 episodes.
Noob.
Yeah, a noob, which is, it's weird because, you know, saying that, I mean, this is going to be episode 34. Here's a fun fact. The last interview I did was, in July, the end of July. So it's been a month since I've done a show proper. The entire month of August was me just like pushing out interviews I already did and practicing / rehearsing for the Philadelphia Podcast Fest. So
wait, so all the four episodes a week, it was other people's episodes that you were involved with?
So I did, I recorded all those interviews that I aired in August, in July. Mm-hmm. So that was 2 a week. And then, I recorded like, Late to the Game of Thrones is, our Game of Thrones podcast that we just started in August. So I recorded that in August, but I mean, this show. Yeah, this show proper, I haven't done since the end of July. This show has just been, you know, it's, for me, like, it's weird because it's been so long since I've done this. And every time I have I'm getting ready to have a guest on, like, throughout the day, like, as I'm in the shower or as I'm on my way to work, like, I'm going through the intro, like, how am I going to introduce this person? And, like, I probably cut in my head, like, 3 to 6 different intros, depending on how well I know the person, and then whatever comes out when we hit record. But it was weird kind of getting back in that mindset because for the longest time I've been saying been cutting an intro for the live show, like, welcome to Everything is Awesome Live, and just doing stupid wacky stuff like that when I was rehearsing. Anyway,
and now I'm bringing you back to school.
Yes, exactly. But it's weird calling you a noob because, like, my show's only 30, like I said, about 34 episodes deep now.
This show, but how many shows have you done in your life?
Oh, I've done a lot of shows in my life.
We talk about this on my podcast. Yeah. You've been doing this since, like, the birth of podcasts, since the podcasts were in diapers.
Yeah, no, I started probably about a year after, like, it became, like, podcasting became a term in 2006. I started in 2007, I believe. And when I first started this podcast, I was touting 10 years, not 9 years, because I thought I started in 2006. I forgot when I broke my ankle because that's the key. Like that's like when I left wrestling and started potting. But yeah, so you said you were a noob. You're 26 episodes in as the date of this recording. So I guess, like, what made you want to podcast? Like, what, like, you've been doing it for 6 months, like to the week almost. Do you release every week?
I do. It's a weekly podcast. But then I record about 2 months in advance. So I'm not recording every single week, but I'm definitely recording 4+ episodes every month. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, like, so that's the one thing that this show is new for me. And the issues I've had with my past shows is that, like, all right, I have to have a team of people because, like, it's me and a couple different co-hosts, and I eventually found that, like, the good mix is me and one other person. Like, having 2 people, A, you don't have to rely on everyone getting together at the same time. B, you don't have to worry about talking over each other as much. but it's still like you had to rely on, okay, let's have a schedule, let's meet weekly. It's time consuming really to do a radio show as a podcast where you're like, all right, let's gather all our notes to talk about this and that. So finding this interview, which is what you do, like we both kind of do long form interview. I like to call it, for me, long form conversation, because I'm a terrible interviewer, but I love to talk. I'm a good talker. I feel like something about me talking.
Yes. Well, oh, you caught that drink.
Yes.
You saying that you're a bad interviewer.
Really?
Yeah, you've mentioned that quite a few times in my podcast and in your podcast. So.
I probably mention it all the time on my podcast.
And I've made it to my key.
So I love that you made a drinking game out of my podcast.
100%.
I love it. I love it. Anyway, so doing this long form interview show has been like, it's great. Like it's definitely not the most fun I've had doing a podcast, but it's definitely the most rewarding because like I can do it, if I'm good at it, I think at one point I had 8 shows banked, so that I was like, I think that like you about 2 months ahead. And it's just a great feeling to be able to like kind of not have to worry about a set day, set schedule and whatnot. But it has nothing to do with the point of I feel like you're going to be drinking when we go on wild tangents too.
See, that's out of my key, so you're good. Or I'm good. I'm not going to slur.
Yeah, if that was on your key, you would have to have a bottle of Jack or something because you'd finish it. You'd finish a bottle in an hour.
And full disclosure, it was like it's a glass. It was rum and soda, and it was like just half rum and the rest of soda. So it's not like it's not gonna be like flying high after this. I also have to do work, so it's not like
a little thing called work.
Yeah, I have to sober up by the time we're over. So
Yeah. So what brought you into the world of podcasting? Like how long have you been in the know of podcasting, and when did you know you wanted to do it?
Yeah, I mean I've been consuming podcasts for a few years, not that long, but probably 4 or 5 years. I think I started with the Savage Love podcast maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't even remember how I started on it. I remember hearing about it, and maybe my friend told me about it or something, and I started listening to it. And then little by little, I think it was mostly a couple years ago when I was, I started teaching and I'm working for myself and I work from home. So there's a lot of for teaching. I mean, I'm in front of a classroom, so I don't listen while I'm teaching. But the idea that walking to school or when I'm working from home and I'm on my own most of the day, like something to listen to. And also when I was working out, so maybe a little longer than 5 years. When I started working out and I would be there for an hour, and just something to do. So that's how I started consuming them. And actually, no, I just remember the first podcast I listened to was Design Matters, but I heard it not as a podcast, but as a web download, I think.
Okay.
So maybe that's a little longer. But yeah, I was never like huge into them until maybe a year and a half ago. And there were a couple of podcasts that I've been following, and they've been, both entertaining and informative. I think more than informative ones are the ones that drew my attention more.
Yeah.
So I was listening to them, and I never really thought about starting my own podcast, except that, my business is called This Makes Me Happy. And that was, it's a long-winded story, but I basically was not happy living in New York, and I was not happy with my old job. And I moved back to Philly, and I renamed my business This Makes Me Happy as a conscious effort to just be conscious that my move to Philly and starting my business were very purposeful to be happy. So just every time I hand out my business card and anytime I mention my business name, even when I pay with my debit card has my business name on it, and people are like, "Oh, what's your business?" So that started so many conversations. Just inadvertently, not even trying, just by the sheer action of being, having a company called that. So I was having so many conversations and people tell me their stories and then talking about my experience living in New York and my job and not being happy there. And I've just had so many conversations about it that I wanted to do something about it. Not just keep it myself, but, build content around it. And podcast just came as a natural solution. I was thinking about it for a few months, and then finally, one of the podcasts I listen to is called Being Boss, and it's two women entrepreneurs, and their target audience is mostly female entrepreneurs, but I think for creative entrepreneurs in general is a great podcast. So one of them, they said something that I thought was stupid. Not that they said was stupid, but someone told them something that was stupid, and they were like, yeah, we don't like that. So I emailed them, like, yeah, I agree with you, that was stupid what they told you. And we talked, and then we had a coffee Skype meeting, and we were talking, and then finally, like in the middle of the Skype, Kathleen, who's one of the co-hosts, she's like, encouraged me to do the podcast. And then after, I was like, I'll just do it. There's no reason for me to keep all these stories for myself. So you say you're long-winded, but this was a very long-winded way to answer your question.
Yeah, no. I was there was a couple of times I was going to jump in. I was like, holy shit, this guy's got my number.
See, on my own podcast, I make it all about my guest, and I stop myself. So now that I'm on the other side, I'm like, I'm going to rant, I'm going to talk, and I'm just going to get it all out.
No, that's good. That's I always feel bad for my guests because I'm the one that does all the talking usually, and it's you're probably now the third person that I could say goes toe to toe with me as far as trying to talk that I've had on this show. So you said you were living in New York. Are you originally from Philly? Because you said you moved back, or where are you originally from?
Oh no, so I'm originally from Venezuela. And I'll repeat it, Venezuela, because people think I say Minnesota.
How do the people get Minnesota from that?
It's a thing. There used to be a Facebook group that said, I'm from Venezuela, not from Minnesota. When you say it quickly, or when you say it with a certain accent, people think you say Minnesota. So I remember I said, when I was in school, I was like, I'm from Venezuela, and I've been here for like 4 or 5 years, blah, blah. And then someone who knew I was from South America said, oh, is it cold over there? I was like, what do you mean? We're from the tropics. She's like, yeah, Minnesota should be cold. I was like, holy crap, like, no. But it's a thing. It happens. Like, people say Venezuela and other people hear Minnesota.
I guess if you say quick, yeah, I can see it. Yeah. So when did you move to the States? And then I'll wait for that answer.
Oh, I was like, wait, and then
I cut myself off.
I moved here. I've been here for 13 years. I started college back at home. I was doing engineering school, and then political reasons, not my own political, just the country in general. Yeah. It was time for me to leave. Plus, my school was a top-notch engineering school, but it was falling apart because of the government. So it was time for me to go, and I moved here 2 years into college, and then I started over again, and I did college here, and I got a green card since that I'm here.
So okay, well, this is so. How old were you when you moved here?
19.
About 20, 19.
19.
And did because I would never have guessed you lived in South America. You don't seem to have that accent. Is that something like, did you learn English while in South America? Now, this is where I'm going to be an ignorant asshole because I'm so in my own little world of suburbia that so it's good for me because I get to question, but I'm going to sound like an asshole, I think. But
no. You know what? Here's the thing. When I first moved here, I remember, so I'll tell the less fun story first and this more fun story second. The less fun story was when I moved here, people would ask me the most ignorant questions, and I'm fine with questions where you don't know geography, so it's fine. Or you don't have to know everything about every country in the world. So I'm fine with those questions because you don't need to know. Like, I don't know everything about the U.S. geography. I'm terrible with geography. Today, one of my students, she said from Rhode Island, and I was like, oh, I live in New York. I'm sorry, I hate your neighbor. And she's like, oh, we're actually like 2 states over. Not neighbors. So you don't have to know everything, but some questions I got, someone asked me, oh, is the country civilized? I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, and my answer for this kind of question was always like, yeah, I have a car and I drive around. People ask me, do you guys have air conditioning? And my response was like, yeah, my car has air conditioning. Like those kind of stupid questions are stupid. You not knowing everything about my country, I don't know everything about this country. I've been here for 13 years, so don't worry. Oh, so the fun story.
Okay.
When I first moved here, I was hanging out. I lived off campus for stupid reasons, not my own, but the university's stupid reasons. And I was hanging out with my friends in the dorms one day, and one of them asked me, so are you fresh off the boat? And I didn't pick up the expression right away. So I said, no, I didn't take a boat here. And then just as I responded, I realized how stupid my response was. And that's not what he meant. So he's like, no, but I mean, like, do you just get here? Like, I'm like, no, I took a donkey here. At that point, I already knew what he asked me. So I was just being silly. Yeah. So he's like, oh, holy crap, really? Like, how, like, you took a donkey? Like, yeah, it was like 3 days. It was a 3 day donkey ride, and I got here. And so, like, 6 months later, a friend who wasn't in the room at the moment, she introduced me to her friend. She's like, oh, this is Bernardo who rode a donkey here. I was like, you're first of all, you weren't in the room when I made the joke, so you didn't hear it firsthand. So people are talking about this. Second, like, no, like 6 months later, no. So even better, my friend of 4 years, that was freshman year. Senior year, my friend, our friend who had transferred out, she came to visit, and the three of us were hanging out, and we went to his house to pick up his laundry. And he's like, hey mom, this is Bernardo. This is the kid that I told you who came in on a donkey. I was like, Kyle, you're a fucking idiot. Like, and I'm sorry if Kyle is listening to this. Kyle's actually like a cool guy, but I went home for Thanksgiving for my brother's graduation, and I came back. Like, do you think I took a donkey ride for the weekend? Like, it was the most idiotic but fun thing because I was joking, and 4 years later, people saw. Oh, and our friend who came to visit, she was living in Brooklyn at the time. She was like, holy crap, I tell everyone I have a friend who came here in a donkey. No, American Airlines, thank you. Like
that's
so. Yeah, I forgot your question. I just shared.
So that's fine. It's. I'm always on that. A lot of times I forget what I asked. So you came here when you're 19. So was there? Again, I'm ignorant. So, like, did you know English fluently? Like, how?
Oh, that was your question.
Yeah.
How did you speak English? Yes, I did, because I had gone to summer camp in New York and North Carolina. So, So my parents always stress, like, even before we knew we were coming here, my parents always stress English is a language you should know. Yeah. Nowadays, my mom says Mandarin, but it's too late. I'm like 32 and I'm not going to learn Mandarin today, but I should. But no, growing up, always. My dad went to school in Philly, so he was always very fluent. My mom is not as fluent, but she's always like, she is like, when I say she's not that fluent, I'm saying she doesn't sound the way I sound in English, but you can like drop her in the middle of New York and she'll find her way around just by talking. I mean, she knows New York, but drop her in the middle of any city and she'll find her way around and she'll manage. So she's pretty fluent. But so for them, it was always important for us to learn the language. So my brother and I went to summer camp. My sister, she's 11 years younger, so this was way later. She also did. But yeah, they always made a point that we learn English, and I guess it paid off. But now I can't do a Hispanic accent, so
I was gonna say, so because that's what brought me to that question. I don't hear an accent at all when you talk. Like I would have never guessed you came from another country.
It'll come around. Let's see. I think like it just came around on that for a second. I don't know. Some people say I was in grad school as a TA and I was running some workshops, and then one of the undergrads who had befriended, she later was like, you know what, like, I thought you just spoke funny, but I couldn't really figure out why. So some people think I speak funny. Some people,
okay. Well, I can like not that I think you speak funny, but like you have, I guess that is your accent. Like you do have
So that is your accent. Just you speak funny.
Yeah, your accent's funny. That's what it is. To be fair, I would say that to like a Swedish person too.
I would say to someone from New Jersey.
Oh God. Well, I'm sure people
I'm
say it
kidding.
about. I'm sure people say it about me, like because I'm not from Philly proper. I've grown up in the suburbs my whole life, so I don't have. People can tell that I'm from the, like, it's actually crazy nuts. Some people are so good, like, they're like, oh, you're from outside of Philly, like, you're from the Northeast. I'm like, how do you know that? And I guess it's just little things that we say, but I'm not, like, I never lived in Philly, so I don't say Wooder or, I don't really, John, really. I mean, I guess I do say John, but not.
It took me 10 years to learn, or more. I didn't learn that term until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's not something that, I mean, I don't know when I started saying it because obviously I'm from this area, but to be honest, I've never really used it with any kind of meaning. Like, I'm just like, oh yeah, that John, you know,
But it doesn't have a meaning. It's just anything.
Yeah, it's crazy that, because again, I live in the suburbs, so it's weird because I don't have that Philly accent, but most people can pinpoint me from being this area. I'll tell you the funniest accent, and this is I'm not saying this to be insulting at all, but the funniest accent I've ever heard was two accents combined. I used to do work. I traveled and installed point of sales for gas stations. So I was up in the Boston area. Obviously, they all have accents up there that are. I mean, I really dig their accent. If it's a little thick, it's hard for me to like communicate with them. But like if it's just like kind of like a subtle Boston accent, like I really dig it. Like it's not like I don't think it's funny or anything. But then
$1 for tonic.
Well, I will say the first time that I went there, I giggled like a little asshole when me and my buddy who were working together, we went in a line at Target and we were buying something for work, and he was in line ahead of me, and the lady says to him, "Would you like to apply for a Target card?" And I just lost it in front of everybody. And like when I started to check out, she didn't even say anything to me because she knew like I was too childish for it. But so the gas station that we were doing the install at, the guy there wasn't the manager. He was just a worker, but he was Indian, and he had. I shit you not, I can't even replicate it because it's impossible to replicate. He had an Indian accent with a Boston accent.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Every time I tell this story, people are like, that's not possible. And I swear to God, like, and I wish I could, if I was a better voice actor, I could replicate it, I think, but you could imagine those two accents combined. And it was, at the time, like, I felt bad because I was like, guy, I can't understand you at all. I'm so sorry. Can you get the owner to call? Because I don't.
And you don't want to be an asshole because you realize that it's not like he's not trying. It's not like he's being an asshole, but you should legitimately probably.
Yeah, it was a legitimate, like, in the moment was terrible. I felt bad. In hindsight, I think it's a funny story because it's those two accents don't belong together, and they're definitely they're a funny combination if you try to replay it in your head, because I don't think anyone can successfully mimic it, but you can mimic it in your head.
Well, and like you're a native English speaker. In my head, if I encountered that thing, it's not only the situation where he has a thick accent that's hard to understand, but on top of that, this is not my first language. So I'm like, I have to double translate or triple translate and
so is that still a thing for you? Like, do you still is English still a second language for you where you kind of have to translate, or is it now like equally a first language?
It's so in situations like that, like the one you mentioned, then it can get a little complicated, and then it's the idea that I have to translate the accent, and then there's like simultaneous translations, and then yeah, that situation, absolutely. But everyday thinking, no. Everyday talking, no. I just I have memories that I don't remember if they happen in English or Spanish.
Oh, wow.
Because they're so intertwined. So select circumstances, yes, but by and large, there are memories that I have to think, who was there, where was I, I remember like this one. I don't remember the memory, but I remember the memory of a specific place. And I have to think like, well, that was the mall where I would go after high school. So that had to have happened in Spanish, even though I remember in English.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I dream in English. I think in English. Like I again, under normal circumstances, I don't translate. Under certain situations where, the language gets a little muddled, then I do have to translate.
So when you where did you move to when you first came to the States?
Philly.
Okay. So as far as the States are concerned, you're Philly. And I guess that's because your dad went to school here?
No, that was a huge coincidence.
Okay.
He went to school. It was called the College of Textiles and Sciences.
Okay.
And when I went there, it was called Philadelphia University, and I didn't know it was the same place until after I showed him, hey, I want to go here. And he said, well, that's where I went. I said, no, you went to College of Textiles. He's like, well, that's the same address. They just changed the name. So yeah, I knew he went here. I knew he went to Philly, but I had no idea we were going to the same school. It was just a matter of, it was a Bachelor in Sciences in Design rather than art school. So I after engineering school, would have made an art school, and B, it was my top choice, but it was also out of all my choices, the only one that by the time I applied, I could get in. So it was perfect because, that's where I wanted to go, and it's where I could get in, but not wait a whole semester. But yeah, that was just a big coincidence.
So was there difficult? I guess it wasn't that difficult to kind of get acclimated to U.S. life versus Venezuela life.
See, it's very different because when you're traveling, and I had travel, I went to summer camp a few times, and then I went, I've been to, I want to say Miami a couple of times, but Miami's like being back in Latin America. And then Orlando, I've been a couple of times. So I knew enough, and like I only watched American television, and I only read American books, or not American books, but books in English. Okay. So culturally it was fairly adapted, but it's very different knowing about it and living there. The one thing he's talking about accents, the Philly accent, I kid you not, it took me like a good 6 months. Like Philly locals, for the first 6 months, I barely understood them. So that was a big transition. But then going to the supermarket and having like 5 kinds of milk where we have regular and skim. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Or having like 20 brands of peanut butter, or having peanut butter. We barely eat peanut butter back at home. Oh, wow. So that kind of stuff was a little different. Certain cultural traits, the way people interact with each other. I can remember my first year was I bought birthday presents for some of my friends, and because that's normal back at home, and then no one has bought me presents for my birthday. It's just like, you don't do that unless you're super close friends, whereas back at home you're more, you celebrate not as close friends. So like,
that is strange that you say that, because like I think years ago, me and I have like, I will say 3 best friends, but really only 2 of them like we exchanged gifts with, like for birthdays and for Christmas. But like at some point, and I want to say we were still teenagers, like I want to say we were probably like 19, and we said, guys, how about the presents to one another is that we just don't buy each other a gift. Like we save the money, and it quickly turned into just like, it became a family thing that we get gifts for. And maybe for birthdays, like my best friend in the world, my birthday is July 13th. His birthday is July 12th. So, we had another friend whose birthday was like July 9th, I believe. So we used like, the thing that we did was like, let's just have one big birthday bash. And like, that's how we celebrated. We didn't really get each other gifts. We didn't want people to bring us gifts. We just wanted to get together, and we were in our early 20s, obviously, maybe late teens, and we just wanted to get together and drink.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's the end of that story.
That's out of that story. Where do we go from there? We're done.
So yeah, we're done. All right, thanks for being here. The quickest show that we've ever done. So what made you move to New York after you were done going to school here?
The funny story is that I always wanted to move to New York, except when I actually moved to New York. Like in undergrad, I briefly considered transferring, but I didn't. I'm happy I didn't because I got such amazing education. And then I said, I after school I want to get a job at a big agency or big. I want to work in the fashion industry back then. I'll go to New York, and I got a job offer. It was North Jersey, but I calculated it was cheaper for me to live in Manhattan and commute.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, I'm going to live. And then I got a job offer in Philly, and I stayed in Philly. And then I got into grad school in Philly, and I got into grad school in New York. I was like, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to do this. And I ended up staying in Philly. And finally, because I was living in East Falls. I was in Center City. So to me, East Falls is great when you have a family or when you're a student, but I was neither. So I moved to Center City, and I fell in love with the city. And then after grad school, it was 2010, no jobs here. But I got a quote unquote dream job in Manhattan, and I was like, I got nothing here, and I got to take this opportunity. And that's why I moved up there out of necessity. Yeah.
And then you said you moved back because you weren't was the job that you took in New York ended up being the job you weren't happy with, or something else?
No, it was just a combination of things. And I think that in hindsight, a lot of it was attitude. I feel that it was just not. So I think people say it's being at the right time, the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
I think there's a third component, the right place at the right time for the right person. So it's not just about having a great opportunity and getting it on time. It's making sure that opportunity at that time is good for you. And I just think New York at the time wasn't the right place for me. And I just think that job, at the time wasn't me, and I feel that I wish that I could have made it better, but it just wasn't the place for me. New York is just huge, and I remember people would ask me how I liked it, and I felt bad because people dream of moving to New York and they struggle to live there. And I wasn't making that much money, but I was making enough to live on my own. And grad school, I had a scholarship, so I had no debt. So I was like, I should be happier, but so I was like, how do you like New York? I'm like, yeah, I like it. And then one day I decided to say, you know what? It's not true. I'm just going to come out and like, all right, how do you like New York? I really don't like it here. And people were like, well, you know what? You either love it right away or it'll take you a year, and then give it a year and you will fall in love with the city. So I originally was going to move back after the first year, but I decided to extend my lease. I said, again, how many people can afford to live in Manhattan on their own, have no debt, and make it? Yeah. So I extended my lease another year, give it another shot. And when the year mark came by, people were like, oh, how do you like New York? I was like, you know what? Like, people said I would love it after 1 year, but I still don't. It just, people were like, well, like, give it 2 years. No, give it 3 years. No, it took me like 4 years to like it. No, I've been here for 8 years and now I start to like it. Just give it more time. It's like, fuck that. Like, why? No. Why? I'm not going to give it more time. And the job was a similar thing. It was just not the right place for me to be there. Mm-hmm. It was just what my group needed from me was very different from what I wanted from the group. So again, in hindsight, I think that people were great. I don't know. I just feel that I speak so negatively about it, but I just think in reality, it's just a matter that it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I would work with them on freelance project. There was another group that I freelanced with for a while, and I loved it. Even they offered me to apply for a full-time, because I was freelancing for the whole 2.5 years. Okay. There was another group within the company that offered me to apply for a full-time position. And if I wasn't planning on moving back to Philly, I would have taken it because I loved working with them. Yeah. So in hindsight, it was just the group that I was in had different needs for me. And that was it. Like, that was it. It wasn't terrible. It was just not for me.
Okay. So, and now so you were freelancing. Is that like encompass you with your own business at the same time? Like, this is out of my league too, when you're freelance / contractor.
No, so this one, so I guess contractor is the right term. It was just for technical reasons, they needed to open up a position for them to hire people, but they needed a lot of people. So the workaround was they subcontracted you from other companies. So when I say freelance, I was there 40 hours a week for 2.5 years. I was like full-time employed, but they only paid me for the days that I work. I had no, I was able to buy into insurance, which was amazing, but I wouldn't get time off. I wouldn't get benefits or any of that. So it was a weird arrangement. It was just a matter of technicalities.
But was it in New York that you started? Because you said you changed the name of your company to This Makes Me Happy. So did you start the company in New York when you were freelancing, or?
Yeah, so I started the company for, again, technical reasons. It had a different name, and I didn't really freelance. I did 1 or 2 little projects, but just emotionally, this job was taking a lot out of me. And then I went to school part-time my second year that I lived there. So I didn't really have time to do outside work. I just needed it for technical reasons. Gave it a name that had meaning to me, but doesn't really make a lot of sense to other people. So one day I was talking to a friend, and I remember that's when I realized, I had that aha moment. If it doesn't make you happy, it's not worth it. / I'm going to move back to Philly and be happy. And that's why I changed the name to This Makes Me Happy.
Okay.
So I did it while I lived in New York, but when I was planning to move back to Philly to start my business.
So and that's what you do full time now is just your own business.
Yeah.
This Makes Me Happy.
Well, full time ish. I also teach. I teach part time, and then I have my business, graphic design business. Work with bigger clients and doing branding and design and all the good stuff. And then my podcast, which takes a lot of time, which is another part time job that doesn't pay yet.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting because you say and that's and guys. So you're the second person I've probably talked to who is unlike me in the 9 years I've been doing this. Like you want to make it pay, you want to make it. Have it make money for you, and you actually how to do it. Like you're a good you obviously do it for a living. You brand, you market, whatever. And I don't know, it's just such an interesting concept because you're also the other guy that mentioned it to me. It was his first podcast too that he's talking about. And I wonder if it's me being just not having success through podcast 1 through 17 and on podcast 18 saying, I'm just going to do it for fun. Because as I said on your show, to me, I don't think that should be your mindset going into a podcast. It shouldn't be I'm going to make money off of it. It should be more I just want to have fun with it.
Well, but here's the thing. I'm a capitalist, and I believe that money is a good motivator, and not in the sense that I'm greedy, because I'm not. If I was greedy, I would have taken I would have looked out for a full-time job 3 years ago. I was making way more money when I was living in New York and had a full-time job than I've maybe 3 years into it this year, I'll match it. With a lot of work. So I'm not capitalist in the greedy sense of the word, but I'm capitalist in the sense that I know that you need a motivation for what you do. And I know that I want to be able to do this for 5 years. I also think, going back to the idea of having my job in New York and wishing I had a different attitude, I wish that could have just been my 9 to 5 that pays the bills. And then I could have done something like a podcast where I don't care to make money out of a podcast because I have a full-time job. And whatever time I spend in the podcast doesn't matter because I have stability. As my own boss, as running my own business, it's a lot of time and a lot of effort. Sure. And I don't have the stability to say, all right, all my bills are paid, and I know that I'm going to be working 9 to 5 in a job, and then when I get home and I spend time on my podcast, it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter. So I know that if I want to do this for the next 5 years, I'm happy that I have Jason who does all the editing for my podcast, and I have Orly who does my social media, and I have Rosie who does my show notes. I don't pay that much for those services, and I'm blessed that I pay a fair wage. Rosie's she's my business development person for my business, so I pay her an hourly rate that's fair for her. But thank God that Orly is doing social media for free and Jason's doing social media by editing for free, because I wouldn't be able to afford all that. Yeah. But if I want to be able to afford more services, I have to be able to pay for them.
Yeah.
So it's just a different thing. It's just like a different attitude. And I don't think I enjoy my podcast any less. I don't think you're going to be any less successful with your podcast than I am if I ever make money. But let's think about it also. How many podcasts actually monetize?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, because there's in the world in 2016, there's more podcasts than ever. I think within the last 12 to 18 months, with the birth of Serial, and other, like with television and movies kind of taking podcasting seriously, like more people than ever know what a podcast is. Mm-hmm. And so obviously more and more people are doing it, and which I think is great. Like, I think I'm of the mindset the more podcasts the better, because everyone can up their game or just be influenced by someone else, or it's storytelling is just good. If you can talk on a mic and have a story, I'm all for it. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, not many podcasts set out to monetize.
And I didn't fully conclude that idea. The idea that I'm a capitalist and I want to make money out of this podcast, but even if I don't make money, and I'm spending money on it because I'm hosting it and I have all the services set up just for it. But even if I don't make money out of it, I'll keep doing it. And I'm going to do the Gary V model where he said, he did his wine YouTube for, I think he said like a year or two, and then figured out how to make something out of it. So I'm fine not making money out of it. But as a business person, where this is my passion project, but I'm spending between 5 and 10 hours a week that building my own business. 5 to 10 hours are a lot. If I can make money, I'd be okay. If I cannot make money out of it, I'll still do it.
Yeah, and that's the good mind. That's the mindset to have, I think, and that's an appropriate mindset to have. That's the mindset I have. Well, I get mine might be a little bit reversed. Mine is more so like, oh, if I can make money, that's great. But that's like I don't look for sponsors anymore. Like, that used to be a big thing for me. Let me find sponsors. Let me do this. Let me do that. Like, the most that we do now is, and we don't make anything off of it now, but is we set up a Patreon about a month ago.
New to the underworld and totally bored? Get out of the red and into the sun with Monstro's Kayak Adventures, docking every hour starting at sunrise on the weekends. Explore the infamous River of Souls in an up-close and personal way. All souls living or departed, welcome! So book your Monstro Kayak Adventure today. Warning, significant eternal damnation may occur. All parties must sign a liability waiver and enter at their own risk. This message was paid for in part by the Hades Initiative to Decrease Hope Foundation.
Do you need a new do for the latest dark curse? Come on down to Scissor Hand Salon, where we'll give you the perfect look for your latest cursed identity. Villains, we've got a fresh supply of baby powder and furry robe silver dye just for you. Are you now a princess? We do hair extensions too. Whether you're a hero, villain, or can't remember, stop by Scissor Hand Salon. We're a cut above the rest. Newly appointed dark ones get 50% off when they mention this ad and don't completely annihilate us.
For me, like, we have a lot of goals on our Patreon, but like, I'd be happy with whatever our first one is, which covers my yearly hosting costs for this podcast and some of the other things that kind of are in my umbrella of stuff that I do. So like, that's like, I'm at the point where break even is like where I'd like to be. So people out there, if you go to patreon.com/awesomepodcast, feel free to pledge some money every month.
And how's that going?
We have $0 so far, and that's fine. Like, I mean, I literally don't really, I mean, it's been up for about a month. I don't do much promotion for it because this is like, so like, whereas you have like a little team behind you. It's just me, and that's because I'm not everyone I know that would be willing to help. Like they also have their own things going on. So like I have a buddy who would be more than willing to help, but he's writing books and like he's in his own world doing that. So where I falter is marketing. I'm a piss poor marketer. As bad as I am at interviewing, I'm even worse at marketing. But again, I finally, after 9 years of podcasting, have accepted that and attack the show a different way. And I also don't rely on 5 other people like to be a co-host, and like I don't have to feel bad that they're not getting paid. I'm not wasting other people's, like at most I'm wasting your time, and I might, I'm having a good conversation, and something that I stole from Jeff Stormer, who hosts Party of One. He's part of the Philadelphia podcast group. He said on one of his podcasts that the reason he started Party of One was so that he could play more tabletop RPG games. And like when he said that, I was like, holy shit. Like it's basically why I started this podcast. Just as an excuse to sit down and have an interesting conversation with interesting people. And that's like the mindset for me.
What happens if tomorrow no one wants to sign up to be a guest, or no one wants to pay your Patreon at all, but you already have what you already have? Like, how does that feel?
Well, I mean, if no one wants to be a guest, that feels shitty because
but what I'm saying is, like, let's say what you already have is what you have. Like, let's say that your current experience is it. Without negative feelings for the future, but like today, knowing what you already have, how do you feel?
It's great. Like I said, I'm at a place 9 years later where I have accepted that, and it's something that I think I should have accepted much sooner, is that like that podcasting necessarily isn't going to make you money. It's you may be able to make a couple bucks, but it's never going to be a full-time gig, really. Not for everybody. Like you it's a 1 in a million chance to make that happen. So for me, like if this is the status quo where I'm just sitting around talking to people, I mean, I think the only thing I want my show do, is I would like to get it evolved enough to where I can talk to, and I said this in my promo that I cut today for I think either the intro or the outro for the show we posted today, is the goal isn't to get more like to go strictly famous people that we're talking to, because that's not. I want to still talk to interesting people, and to me, I have a buddy who lives in Alabama, and for the same reason where I thought I was going to sound ignorant to you talking about where you came from, like the Southern culture is just a culture I don't understand, and I love talking about it, and that's an interesting conversation to me. So I still want my show to have that, but I would love to be able to talk to interesting people who I also admire.
But
like Kevin
yeah, is there? Oh, sorry, I have to drink again. He said Kevin Smith. But I mean, but there's nothing wrong with doing both, and as long as we can still get those people.
And that's the goal. Like the goal is to be able to get to a level. Like I guess that's my goal now. Like if I had to say that, like if your goal is to start, making a little bit of cash off it so that it gets worth. I shouldn't say worth your time, for all the reasons that you just explained. If that's your goal, my goal is more so to be able to. Sorry, guys, there's something in my throat. My goal is to be able to get to a point where, like, I could email Kevin Bacon, I could email Will Smith or his representatives and say, hey, I would love to interview him. I would love to sit down and talk to your client, and not worry about not getting a response or. I think that's the thing. Like, I want to get a response. You can say no. I want to get to the point where people are like, oh, we know this podcast, but fuck no. Or, or yes, like, yeah, yes, do it. So that's me getting paid, is being able to talk to every interesting person that I want to talk to and not be limited to the fact that, like, oh, well, I'm just this dude from Philly who does a dopey little podcast that these A-list celebrities or B-list celebrities or D-list celebrities don't want to talk to. And I shouldn't say that, because we've lucked out big time with already, like, and I fully put that in the hands of what I call the super friends. The people that listen to this show, whether they're organically from Everything is Awesome, or we pulled a lot of people over from this other podcast, Once Upon a Wine, that I produce. A lot of their fans came over. Like, they're the reason that I got Aaron McGathy on my show, which was a big deal to me. And I know I say that a lot lately. I'm surprised you haven't taken a drink yet.
I know. I'm like, shit, I didn't put that one on my list.
But I mean, for the last almost 2.5 weeks now since that episode aired. No, not 2.5 weeks, 2.5 months since that episode aired. I bring it up a lot because that is like an important milestone for me and this show, because it's one of 3 people in podcasting that like I really admire, like really truly, like, wow, like they do what I do, but they do it real good. And they do it in a way that like I respect and that entertains me, and that like it makes me want to emulate them. So I should it's not fair to say that we're not on that level, because we totally are. Like I sent an email to her, and she said yes. Like, she could have totally ignored it. She could have totally blew me off. That's what I was expecting, to be honest. And she didn't, and it was great. So, it's, so I guess I should give more props to my show, but
but I think like there are different currencies. So for me, money is one of the currencies because it, to me, money translated to sustainability, the fact that I can do this in 5 years. But there's also the idea, in your case, your currency is credibility, and getting to the point where, and when I say credibility, I mean to the point like street cred, if translated to podcast cred.
Credibility is the one. You said everything I said over the last 5 minutes and summed it up in one word.
And I'm very verbose, so the fact that I can sum it up in one word, like I'm like patting my own back. But yeah, like credibility is your currency, and that's what you want. You want to reach those people. Like, to me, I would love to get a point where I can go to Tim Gunn and say, "Hey, Tim Gunn, come to my podcast." So that's a huge thing. But I think a third one that we haven't talked about yet is also authenticity. Mm. And I pulled you from the crowd for my podcast because you were just being chatty as I was recording. I was like, if you're going to be chatty, chat with me. And the whole conversation was super authentic. And then we carried it over after, for like an hour. And then I didn't pick up the guy's name from
Mike from Toxic Radio.
Yeah. So, and he came over, and then we just had this conversation. The whole thing was very authentic. And then I listened to your podcast episodes, and everything's very authentic. And the way so you say you're not good at marketing. Well, I mean, that's something you just need to figure out, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
I'm good at that stuff because that's what I do for a living, but you don't do it for a living. And I know it's not easy. So for me, I emailed this woman, Natalie Kogan. She's CEO of a company called Happier, and she does TED Talks and speaks around the world, and I emailed her like blindly, and I was like, she's not going to get back to me, and she didn't get back to me for a while, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to hear back from her, so I'll send a follow up, but whatever. And before I was able to send a follow up, her response was like, I love the email you sent me. Like, my email. When I solicit, I created a graphic, an animation. It's a picture of a person. I have their name written there, and it says, Kev, what makes you happy? And then it's animated. And I send that to her, and then the email is very nicely designed because, I mean, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I compose an email, and Rosie, my business development, I don't know how you finish that title, business developer. She helped me finesse the email. So when I emailed Natalie Kogan, her response was like, I love your email. How could anyone say no to that? And then I also email this guy, Ben Kasoy. He is a founder of DoSomething.org. And my sister, Orly, who does my social media, she's an amazing, I don't want to say connector yet because she's too young to be a connector, but she's amazing. She's amazing in reaching out to people and getting a yes. And she met this guy at a conference last year. She met him again this year, and he remembered her. And I emailed him, same email. I made it the graphic, but of course I customize it. So even though I have an email, I still make sure that that email goes to that person. So there's a quote unquote template because it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel. But every email I customize, make sure like, Ben, I love DoSomething.org and I love what you do for this, and this is why I think you should be on my podcast. The examples I put in the email are customized to that person. And then when I give them reference of who I interviewed, they're customized to that person. I make sure that even though I have a standard message, that I have a standard message because I want to make sure that I convey the right idea, but I customize it for every single person. So this guy, Ben Kasoy, his reply was like, yes, of course, I'll be on your podcast. By the way, I forwarded your email to my team. And I think that's that level of authenticity that you have. And I'm tooting my own horn just as an example, but that's a third level of authenticity, the way that you come off and you say, I'm not good at interviewing, which I think is not true, because I've heard you. And
but see, there's a difference between having a conversation and having an interview. And I so if I were to, and it may be all in my head, I'll admit that, because I wish I still had it. But the first interview I ever conducted 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago, was with this artist called Fat Baby Leg. And it literally was, I had, let's say, 10 questions written down. I would say, hey, Bernardo, what's going on? How are you today? And you'd answer the question. I go to question 2. So how did you get into graphic design? You would tell this great story. Instead of me following up off that story you just told, question 3, how is it like to work with whoever? Like, it was literally me just reading my 10 questions in and out, done.
But that doesn't work for you, so you're being authentic by adapting the format to how you can be authentic. You're not authentic by doing prepared questions.
Yes.
But you're being authentic by having a conversation.
Yes, and it's great because I am also lazy. So like I'm better at this podcast when I don't do research. So it's literally great because it's an excuse to be lazy almost. Not to say, like, with a podcaster, I try to listen to at least one episode because I like to know a little bit of knowledge of that. But other than that,
I gave you no choice because to call you out live.
Yeah, I mean, I was not only was I part of your podcast, I was like, well, I'm going to, of course, listen to myself. And then I instantly started listening to it. And as soon as and first of all, can I just say because at some point after your podcast, but before the end of the night, Lisa, who was the other guest on that episode, on episode 26 of This Makes Me Happy, I think it was 100% great. She was not there to see any podcast in particular. She was there because she likes podcasts and she saw that it was the podcast fest and she was there to hang out and watch podcasts. Like, that blew my mind as like a fan of podcasts and as a podcaster. I was like, holy shit, like there's people out there that actually like this shit. Like,
and I was so thankful because I did not know that you were supposed to bring your own audience with you. I thought there would be an audience. So I invited people, but my audience that I brought with me was, relatively small. And I was like, holy shit, I can interview Jason or I can interview Orly. Like, Rosie was working. She couldn't come with me. And then I come there, and then Lisa's there in the audience. And not only is she there just for random podcasts to have fun, but she also was able to, like, put off her tater tots for half an hour to talk to me. I was like, you're freaking awesome. Yeah,
she was a real cool person. And it was really cool meeting someone that was like there as a fan. Because I mean, same thing. Now I knew that like one of the, and I don't know, I guess this may have been in one of the emails. I don't know. I knew that like, okay, like I have to sell this podcast hard to get an audience there. And like, I mean, the only audience I brought with me was my fiance, her friend, and my co-host's wife. They're the only people that I knew were coming. And then obviously like the guests I brought, only one of them brought someone else. So like that small audience I had there, which I don't even I couldn't even tell you how many people were there because shockingly, like as into wrestling as I was, and as I was able to go into the middle of a ring and talk on a mic without stuttering and without coughing and without saying as soon as I was, and I think it was because I was doing a monologue standing up, it was incredibly nervous. I focused on the wall and maybe one person in the audience, so I don't know how many people were actually there, but it was so it was completely nerve wracking. And listening back to it today when I was editing it, 20 some minutes of monologue, I was like, okay, well, clearly we're going to shave about 15 minutes off this, and I think that's what so. This was like a year for like first class Philadelphia podcasters. Like there was me, there was you. Party of One was their first year at the podcast.
Well, thank you for calling me first class because I don't know. I think that's very generous.
Okay, well, your take. I did not mean it as a compliment. I guess I meant freshman. I mean it as a compliment because.
Okay,
Yeah.
Freshman class, not
freshman class. Yeah,
and there I go thinking you're complimenting me.
No, but and truly, and I've only listened to the episode I was on, but like I could tell doing the show, and I could tell listening back to it, and I can tell now talking to you, like it's. Here's how, and your show is different because it is literally just talking to people about what makes them happy. Essentially, I do the same show. I just call it awesome, not happy.
Yeah.
So I mean, I obviously like that thing. And this is the way I know that I like to these styles of shows just in general is I listen to 25 o'clock with Dan Drago, and that's all usually music based. It's sometimes like he had me on his show. I'm a podcaster. He's had comedians on, but mostly he has musicians on. As I said on your show, I'm not into music. I'm more of a talk radio guy. So, but I listen to his show and I really enjoy it, and I enjoy talking to musicians. I think you kind of touched on it like almost an hour ago, like that you like to be informed. You like the podcast that like kind of like you learn a little something, and that's what this is to some extent. This is what your show is to an extent. Is I'm just learning something about Lisa liking tater tots, or people listening to it. For me, they learned about podcasting maybe, or they learned about wrestling. They learned about something that they didn't know about, and I don't know how we got here. I'm hoping you're drinking because that was a wild tangent.
I wasn't, but now that you're talking about being verbose, I have to drink.
Yeah. So I don't know how we got there, but yeah, podcasting rules. And yeah, you are not only are you first class, but yeah, we had a lot of freshman class podcasts, I think. And I think it's just so great that there's that many podcasters in the Philadelphia area, and that the medium's just taking off like it never has before. And it's a good time to be a podcaster, and
It's a good time to be.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like it's.
Oh, another swig.
It is. I know.
I'm out.
Yeah, I finished my 2 beers already that I brought in with me, but I was also drinking to drink. I wasn't playing the game. I was playing the drinking game of alcoholism.
One thing in my key that you haven't mentioned yet. I wonder if you're going to bring it up or not.
Interesting. I almost don't want to end the show until I do.
So we're here for 3 hours.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to get back to the point that we were making. I don't know where we left off.
So many of them.
So, okay. So you started the podcast. Let's finish this story, I guess. So you started the podcast, actually, we didn't get to that. You came to Philly. You renamed your company. You moved to Philly, and it helped you have interesting conversations about, hey, this makes me happy as my company, and this is why it's the name. Why? We did. You talked to the other podcasters, and that's how you started podcasting.
Yep.
So let's talk about your process. I like to listen to other people's process for podcasting. What's a typical after you, like the day of the interview, like what is the process to set up for that, and how do you conduct most of your interviews?
It depends. So I talk to a variety of people, and some people are into public light, and some people are more people you would never hear about. So I tend to do a little research on them, and if there are people in the public light, again, like I mentioned before, Natalie Kogan, who's done TED Talks, and she's a CEO of a company, and she does blog posts. So I could do very good research on her. I interviewed another woman, Shirley, who she has a jam company and she makes pickles, and there's not that much out there for her, so my research for her was more limited. So I do all this research and I take notes and I write them down, but then I go into the conversation with fresh eyes. So we start recording. I give them a walkthrough of how the conversation will go. I have my notes on with me, and then I have some generic open-ended questions. But all that is just my safety net. Most of the time, I barely use them at all. And then just get started. And like you say, you're lazy and you don't do research. I do the research, but then I go in with the same attitude you go in. I don't think it's being lazy. I think it's a lot of hard work going in not knowing what you're going to talk about. So I don't know what I'm going to talk about because I don't know what the person's going to say makes them happy. So I just, we start recording and I ask what makes you happy. And based on that, we just start talking for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Every so often I go back to my notes, and sometimes, I feel a little creepy because if it's someone who's got a lot of content out there, I refer to it in the conversation casually.
Well, and so I've only had that experience once with Aaron McGathy, really. I mean, a couple of that's not fair, because a couple of my other guests, like, I was fans of before, or I've known before, so things came up casually. But I would say the closest thing to what you're just describing is my conversation with Aaron McGathy. It was probably the most prepared I was for an interview, because I know her as a podcaster. I know her as a comedian, as a personality. So it was weird bringing up things, and there was certain things that I stayed away from, because like she was married to Dan Harmon for 11 months, and they recently got divorced about 8 months ago or something like that. And at the time that we recorded the podcast, it was probably only 6 months ago. And I didn't bring that up because, like, I'm not a relationship podcast. I'm here to talk about, like, literally your podcast, which we didn't. We talked about Ireland on that episode for the most part. But it was weird because I was able to, like, say, yeah, so you moved to Ireland, and, like, it's weird because, like, I don't know her, but I do know that information. So I almost said it. I do get where you're coming from.
And to me, it's surprising, like you said, it's creepy, and but, like, some people that I have the most information and I don't use it at all, and some people where I have a lot of information but it just takes a different turn. You're saying, like, you didn't talk about the divorce because you're not a relationship podcast. I had one episode with Debbie Millman. She's, like, I just admire her. She's, like, my intellectual and professional crush, and she knows this, and every time I talk to her, she knows that I just go gaga over her. And she came on my podcast, and I had a lot of research on her, and I've been following her for years because she's a friend, but also someone who I've been following for a while. And then her conversation didn't bring a lot of the back. We talk a lot about what I researched and what I know of her, but then all of a sudden she starts talking about how she was depressed a few months ago. And, I have a podcast about what makes people happy. And I was like, I don't know. It was in my head. I was like, how do I build up on this? And I actually had to stop because I mean, there's a person I know, and I love Debbie. She's a dear friend. And so beyond being someone I'm interviewing, it's someone I care for. So I want to make sure she was okay. But then we kept going, and her thing, making things make her happy. And that's what helped her go through that tough moment. So that idea that you're improvising and you're creeping on a person because you know a lot about them, because you're a friend or because you research, but then also the idea that sometimes the conversation goes somewhere else that you weren't expecting to go, and you just have to, like, think about it. You didn't handle the divorce part, but what if she brought it up? Like, how do you handle that?
Well, then if it came up, there's plenty of conversation there. And that's another what if. Hopefully, for maybe if we have her on a second time, that if it comes up, then it will come up and we'll talk about it, because it's 100. Oh God, I almost said it
Yeah,
again.
well, I'm done. So I can't. It's the barrel. The bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. So, after talking to Aaron McGathy, like it was such a surreal moment. Anyone that hasn't listened to episode 20, Irish Fairies yet, which is my interview with Aaron McGathy, I highly recommend listening to it. I think it's really good, but I think what's a really neat aspect that I did is that I sat down in my little Shedio before the call, and I hit record on my studio machine, and I was like maybe 5 minutes or so of me sitting there waiting for her to sign on to Skype, and like kind of like that, like what you see in a movie where someone's pep talking themselves in front of a mirror is what I did. And I edited it so that there wasn't a lot of dead air, but I put it out on the head of the episode. So like it opens with me talking to myself saying, oh man, I can't believe this is happening. Like whatever I said, like I pep talked myself into the interview, and it's, I think you hear that Kev, then you hear the intro, and then you hear me start talking, and it's a completely different Kev where like I'm podcast Kev. And I think that's the most intriguing episode to me, I guess, because it just, I don't know, it still is the one that I hold near and dear to my heart at the moment.
And then you went through it, and then you do other episodes and handle them differently.
Yeah, no, 100. And, oh my God, I've stopped myself.
I'm done. Like I can't.
I've stopped myself 3 times now. Yeah, it is. Each episode is done better, and the next challenge from there was the Philadelphia Podcast Fest. So let's end the show there. Let's talk about that. So you've been doing the show for about 6 months now, talking to your interesting people, talking about what makes them happy, going on unexpected depression talks at some point. What made you decide to be part of the Philadelphia Podcast Fest, and how was that experience as someone who's only been doing podcasting for 6 months?
There's something I do sometimes where I just jump into something not having all the information and then just make it happen and make it work. And this was one of those circumstances. I was there and I was like, oh, I'm going to, I usually prepare a lot, and I'll just confess because it's over. I like to prepare myself. I like to know what I'm getting into, but I also sometimes I will sign up for things and then do research. In this case, I've been very busy working and very busy getting ready to start teaching. It's the beginning of semester. I just joined the board of AIJ Philadelphia, which is a professional organization. Like I have way too much on my plate. Mm-hmm. So to be honest with you, I barely researched the podcast festival. Like normally I would go and check it out before, I would go to another event. I would do research. I would do, look at reviews. And this time I just said like, I'll sign up and I'll do it and I'll see how it goes. I've been part of the Philadelphia Podcast Society's website, and we talk about this. I'm not active because I feel there's a lot going on there, but there's a lot of awesome stuff. So when I saw that, I was like, like it's a good challenge. Let's do it. And then I show up and I'm like, holy shit, like what am I doing? But I'm good at improvising and landing on my feet. So,
well, and I will say this. I mean, I feel like I think your show went off without a hitch, more so than mine did. And mine had a rough 20-minute opening. I don't know when you showed up, but like my show was, and I straight up say it in my pre-intro that I recorded in the podcast download today. Is that the 20 minutes is rough, but again, I'm not a disingenuous person, so like I'm gonna air that rough 20 minutes. It's light. Like I didn't even go. I started listening to it and I was like, oh my God, I can't stand the sound of my voice right now. So I didn't even listen to the full episode of the live show because as much fun as I had, I count it as a win because it was something that was a big challenge for me to do, after talking to Aaron. So this was the next big challenge, and I count it as a win because I did it, and it ended really good, and people came up to me, and no matter how many people came up to me and said that they enjoyed the show and that they, I mean, we've booked our next live show, like things happened because of it. I still am like, well, but that 20 minutes was awful. Like, you guys know that I clearly don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, I faked it this whole time. I still feel that way. So like, I did not really listen to it. I think you went off without a hitch. Like, it was near perfect.
Can I just tell you? Well, first of all, I had no idea we were going live. I didn't know that it was streaming live until like 5 minutes into it that I realized. When I called you out, I think that's when I realized it was streaming. I feel that I was a little naive at the moment, because not just for that, but in general, like, we walked in and Jason was more concerned than me because, again, as I said, I didn't know I had to bring my own audience. It was just one of the moments that it was half fake it till you make it and half I genuinely was not. And again, like, I don't want to sound like I'm super busy all the time, but like, I've been so busy lately that walking in there, it didn't click in how unprepared I was until
go time.
Until not even go time, until after the fact, and it's like, oh, okay, it worked out. Like, I lucked out that Lisa was there, and I lucked out that you were there. Like,
yeah.
So I was like so naive the whole time, and I think in this case it was a good thing because I would have freaked out otherwise. No,
and it was just such a good day. I was there from start to finish for that day, and it was and I've said it numerous times now. Big thanks to Nathan and Tegan for throwing it together.
Did such an awesome job.
33 shows was the final count of how many shows were part of the Philadelphia Podcast Fest. I think they're gunning for over 40 next year. And
I'll be there if they take me in.
Yeah, well, and I told them, like, I mean, I talked with them throughout the course of the night, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping that. Before, I would say this is the fourth year that they did the Podcast Fest. I'm going to say about 5 to 6 years ago, talking with a buddy of mine when I co-hosted the Stabcast, I said, what's like a big thing now is this thing called VidCon out in LA. Like, it's a bunch of like YouTubers and bullshit people that go out and like conference about YouTube and whatnot. Why isn't there a podcast thing like that around here? Like, we should totally do PodCon. So, and it, like, I talked about it for a year or two, and we never really got it, like, ideas to work. And then the Philadelphia Podcast Festival happened, and I was like, motherfuckers, they stole my idea. But like, but they do a great job with it. And I told them before I left that night, I was like, if I'm willing to help out with anything you guys want to do. Cause like, and I said it on your show, like, podcasting it is near, I said it on my show too, in my monologue, like, podcasting means a lot to me. It's literally what I do almost in my free time is everything podcast pretty much. So, it means the world to me. I think it's an important medium. I think it's a medium that needs more recognition, and we'll end on this note before we kind of let you give your proper, plugs in. This episode marks the beginning of September, and September 30th is International Podcast Day. I've been thinking for a while of what I want to do for it, and I'm still not quite sure what I'm going to do. We're going to air some sort of special. Not sure what we're going to do.
Just a video of 100 podcasters streaking down the street.
I guess I do know 100 and some podcasters now, but what I want to do is at least one thing I want to do is, and I'm challenging all the super friends out there. I'm challenging all the happy friends out there that are listening to this show. Anyone that's listening to this, my challenge to you is to be part of a podcast in some way. Start a podcast. If you have nowhere to send it to me and I will air it. Record a 15-minute podcast and I will throw it on my feed. Or be a guest on a podcast. There's 2 hosts right here, right now that you can contact at That Nerdy Kev on Twitter. What's your Twitter?
My Twitter, the Happy Podcast.
Hit us up on Twitter, or we'll give you more appropriate plugs later in the show. Hit us up. We'll have you. I know Bernardo will have you on as a guest. I'll have you on as a guest. Find a way to get involved with podcasting, because I think it's an important medium, and I think anyone has the right and should do it. You can literally download, if you have an iPhone, it's called VRP7, and it takes really high quality audio. And if you just speak into it for 15 minutes, tell a story, send it to me, and I will throw it on my feed. And that's my challenge for September, for International Podcast Day, is if you're not part of a podcast, be part of one, be a guest, host a podcast, do something in podcasting. If you're already part of a podcast, do something different. That's my challenge to a current podcaster, is do something that you would never do. So Bernardo, that's my challenge to you. And that's my challenge to myself.
I'm already doing it right now. You know what I haven't done before?
You haven't been a guest on a podcast?
I've never been a guest on a podcast. So done. Challenge accepted and accomplished.
And technically this qualifies because it airs in September. So there you go.
Crap. If this was half an hour from now, it would already be September.
It's true. It almost qualifies on all accounts.
So I have to do it again, but I've already done it, so I can't do it in half an hour.
But it airs September, 7 days from the recording, whatever that day is, September 8th, we'll say. 7th, 8th, I don't know. It airs next Wednesday from the date of this recording. So yeah, that's my challenge to a podcaster, is find something that you normally wouldn't do and do that. And the challenge to myself is I wanted to wait to get Kevin Smith on my show, but it just so happens that episode 37, and if you know Kevin Smith, you know 37 is an important number in that mythos. It falls on September 28th, so it falls in the month of September.
One day. Oh no, wait, never mind. 37, not 27.
Yeah. But so my challenge to myself is to try to get Kevin Smith on this show, for episode 37. I know that's such a big challenge that I set up for myself, and I've already have a backup plan for that. But yeah, my challenge to non-podcasters is be part of a podcast. My challenge to podcasters is do something different, do something out of your wheelhouse, do something that's uncomfortable and make it comfortable. That's my challenge for International Podcast Day. There you have it. Bernardo, thank you for being part of the show, man.
Thank you for popping my guest podcast cherry.
Not a problem. And thank you for having me on your show. Tell the kind people at home where they can find you on the interwebs.
So I have two separate things. One is my podcast, which you mentioned, which is This Makes Me Happy. TheHappyPodcast.com, on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, The Happy Podcast. That's if you want to hear my podcast, or look me up on iTunes. I'm there. Just search for This Makes Me Happy and it'll come up. If you need a graphic designer, I run my own design studio. The current URL is a little tricky. It's this-makes-me-happy.com. That will change soon to something without dashes, but for now, it's This Makes Me Happy with dashes instead of spaces. And personal social media, just look me up, Bernado Margulis. You'll find me on Instagram for sure, maybe on Twitter. Don't look me up on Facebook because I only accept people I know. But follow my podcast there and we can be friends.
And of course, you can find me on Twitter. Guys, I changed my Twitter handle. I'm screwing everything up for you guys.
After I published your podcast, and I had to go back into it and change it on my links, but...
And I listened to the interview today, and I'm like, you can find me on Twitter at HH. Nope, I totally changed that, guys. I changed it because I'm going with this whole...
You wanted to make my life miserable and make me change it on my podcast website.
Yes. No, I also, I'm trying to build a brand, and whereas the brand, one could argue, is Everything Is Awesome, I go the Kevin Smith route, and the brand is me. So you can find me on Twitter now at That Nerdy Kev on Twitter. You can find the show at Real Awesome Pod. You can find the show on awesomepodcast.com. Just search any of that and you'll find us. And we're part of That's Entertainment, thatentertains.com, and all that good stuff. Thank you again, Bernardo. It was such a great time talking to you. as part of my
Thank you.
podcast. Thank you for having me on your show last week. I think every podcaster has this feeling. It's awesome being a guest because there's zero pressure.
Oh, I'm being so animated and just like flailing my arms around, being like, yes. So,
okay, I'm sorry. I just see a little error in the top left of my
I know.
screen here.
That's still going to record.
Oh, we'll find out. Okay. For Everything is Awesome, I'm your host, Kev, and we've been awesome right here only on awesomepodcast.com.